They could say, hey, we need it because of this reason, but they don't.
So you want some context.
I'm convinced they just want to mine my phone for the useless information that's on there.
Yes. Somewhere someone is thinking that Doug Looper, if we only get his information,
I realize it's not just me.
Is set. Okay, that's fair.
If Doug ever shows up for one of these records and has fashioned a very small tin foil hat for his phone, just brings his phone, doesn't say anything, there's a tin foil hat on it, I will only be partially
surprised. If he's got crystals that he's waving in and around,
or like a lead box,
out. Oh, the Faraday cage.
The Faraday cage. He goes back to a flip phone and he goes, you know what, they can't track you with a flip phone, that's why.
They'll never catch you.
The government can't get you.
Luckily, I'm not that person.
You've never...
I'm his distant cousin.
I have a good question, which is, do you believe in conspiracy theories?
I believe conspiracy theories exist.
Right, yes.
I don't personally believe in any particular conspiracy theory.
I believe conspiracy theories.
That was...
Right?
You can just stop. That was the best answer anyone's ever given.
That's all we need.
Question. Yeah.
Okay. So
I believe cars exist, but I've never driven one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I mean, they're two different questions. The question you asked.
Yes.
All right. So anyway, I did have to do that in order to accomplish this week's task of listening to this podcast.
And you went through it unscathed?
Yes, because it didn't ask for access to anything.
Okay.
It's just there, and it just wants to play the podcast. It wants to, do exactly what it is. So that made me extremely happy.
Maybe under Doug's picks on our website.
We'll put that up.
Since you guys had never heard of it.
Podcast.com.
Right, Spreakers.
We'll put that up as Doug's preferred, meets all of Doug's core needs.
Right. So if you're also a person who is concerned about some man in who knows where looking at your contacts, you can download Spreaker and sleep easy.
If you also have profoundly embarrassing photos on your phone, the way Doug apparently does based on that story.
Yeah.
So many selfies.
Incriminating,
in a Superman underoos. Mm-hmm. It's really surprising. Doug has shown me, against my will, under duress. No. He's like, look at this. I look like Christopher Reeves.
Yep.
And I said,
he goes, hey, do you recognize his phone number? And it's just a picture of Doug with his dick out. He does, which is hilarious, by the way, when he does it. I love it when he does it.
I love you do fall for it every time.
Do I fall for it, Doug, or do I welcome it?
Okay, maybe both.
I hope
maybe both.
So, Doug, that was the longest. Hey, Doug, did you listen to it segment we've ever done?
We jumped through other questions.
Sure. Right. Brandon, what do we ask next normally?
What I always like to know is, Doug, where did you listen to this podcast?
I listened to this at work.
Okay. I think we're like 3 for 3 now for work. Right?
It works out well because for the first anywhere from hour to 2 hours sometimes, I'm in the office by myself.
Okay.
So, although this particular podcast I would not have listened to just over the speaker.
No, certainly not.
Not suitable.
That would send you to get a trip to HR.
I gotta say, in the least sexiest, supremely almost clinical way he describes sexual acts, I probably could have gotten away with it. But they do give the little forewarning at the beginning of the episode, so I thought, even though no one's here, somebody could walk in, I'll listen on my headphones.
Yeah, I listened to it. I actually took my lunch break, and since the pods are about a half an hour each, I was eating a delicious California burrito while listening to the pod, and looking around and just going like, I'm really glad no one knows that I'm listening to this while sitting in the middle of public, but also because it's so funny, I am laughing out loud just to myself. Which, is something that we see all the time. John has a great Sinbad story. Tell it. Let's hear it.
Well, I'd normally save this for talking Sinbad.
Yeah, sure.
But
crossover episode.
I'm going to say this was when Bluetooth devices, any kind of wireless device. I mean, I honestly believe I didn't even have a mobile phone at this point.
Right, just pager only.
Right.
Pager bro.
I was living the pager lifestyle hard at that point.
Yeah.
I was definitely late to the mobile phone game. I was like the last one to have it, mostly because I was poor, and also I think just being resistant. Like, I don't need that.
You didn't want them to have access to your contacts.
I didn't want my photos. I didn't want them to be able to track me. The government to be able to track me. Mostly from, now that I think back, mostly just Doug telling me that. Anyway, so I walk out of a local coffee shop here in Los Angeles, and I see a very tall black gentleman.
He is a large man.
Pacing back, but again, I didn't know who was this.
Right, yeah.
Pacing back and forth, being like, no. I told him no. No, forget it. No, you got to listen to me. And my first thought was, oh, this poor guy. He's clearly mentally ill. He's talking to himself. He's having some kind of a mania or fit. And I felt terrible. I was like, oh, this is terrible. This people. And I genuinely, honestly went through the thought process. Isn't this awful? Someone should be helped. Why aren't there services available to this person? And as I kind of looked to my side, like maybe I can offer to get this guy something to eat.
Of course.
I realized it was comedy legend Sinbad.
Yeah.
And B, he was just having a conversation with A. I saw the blue light in his ear.
Right.
Now, this is what makes this somewhat more of an entertaining anecdote. And that is about 1 year later, I walked out of a different coffee shop, saw a man pacing back and forth, talking to himself. And again, because these still were not very common, it wasn't surprising that I saw a celebrity with one. No one I knew had one at the time. I certainly didn't. Again, talking to himself somewhat aggressively, and thought this poor guy. And I swear on my life, I turned around and it was comedy legend Sinbad yet again.
And then you ran up and went, house guest, bro, house guest.
Right, and actually then I went back inside. I got him some food.
Got him a sandwich.
I just threw it at him for his dumb face for talking on Bluetooth. Anyway, guys, look, I could talk about my celebrity run-ins with Sinbad
all day.
That's not what we're here to do. Doug, you said this was painful. Now, we all agree that Jamie's father, who writes under the nom de plume Rocky Flintstone, under, I genuinely believe, a misguided assumption that is like a sexy porn name.
I have to assume.
And it's not at all. I have some interesting details about that later that, although it is briefly discussed in episode 1 that we all just listened to, and I'm assuming everyone who can currently hear our voices listened to as well, as they're dutifully, based on Doug's command. They probably, had they not listened to it, they paused the podcast. And when I have to listen, it was very commanding when this guy said to do that, when Doug.
Not this guy.
Yeah, Doug, because they all know Doug's
They all know Doug.
He's the eponymous
We're
Doug.
making him listen to podcasts.
Right.
They have to know Doug.
We're not making some guy listen.
Yeah, we're not making Sinbad listen to podcasts.
So we all listened to this first episode, and ideally the second as well. And I think we'd all agree with you that in the world of erotica, regardless of how you feel about it and your experience, this is not good erotica.
No.
This is not good writing. It's really not good anything. Even though at the end I'm going to give some kudos over the arc of the shows that I did, because I've listened to many episodes of My Dad Wrote a Porno. I do have some kudos for Jamie's father for old Rocky Flintstone. But we agree this is not... The source material they're going to do is not good. Did you not find their reading, their humorous take on it?
No, I did. I thought they were funny.
Was funny. Okay.
I thought they were funny.
So the experience of listening was not painful, perhaps? I don't want to put words in
I just don't think you could separate the content in which they're discussing from the enjoyable banter back and forth. It was all very funny, but it was all related back to this horrible book that the dad wrote, that Rocky wrote.
Right. Are you referring to Belinda Blinked, A Modern Story of Sex, Erotic, and Passion, how the sexiest salesgirl in business earns her huge bonus by... Sorry, I almost fell asleep in the middle of the title of this book.
I felt so... The whole time, and they were funny. They were very funny.
They're hilarious,
I enjoyed their banter, but I never once stopped feeling bad for this guy's dad. And for him either, because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, when we're all... And this is... I'm not trying to be sexist in any ways, but men, when they're boys, there's something I'm pretty sure all of us have done during that adolescent years, and that is snooped through the house looking for your dad's porn before you even know what porn is.
Sure.
Right? So
trigger warning, anybody listening at home, that Doug is going to get real sexy right now.
And also moms and dads, hide your porn better.
Hide your porn better.
It's not that hard.
Or don't. Make life easier for you.
Put it right out there.
Okay, so here's my thought. I'm thinking that Rocky, and I'm sorry, the host is
Jamie.
Yep. So I'm thinking that
Jamie, Alice, and James.
Right. And it is, without question, it's a different time, it's a different era. But I'm thinking that poor little Jamie, as a boy, is gone snooping through his house looking for his dad's porn stash. and all he finds are National Geographics. And my thought is, that is where his dad's level of porn stopped, and that was with National Geographic.
Right.
And just the native tribes people, and that was it, and that was enough. And then I think they even allude to, his love of James Bond movies or whatever. That kind of get tied in there. And I feel like that's what he meshed together, and I just felt bad for him.
Yeah.
And I felt bad for Jamie, because I think, as funny as this is, and it's obviously been very apparently lucrative for the whole family.
Choice, of course.
Absolutely,
Jamie's choice. We're doing
but Rocky knows that his son is reading
By the way, and loves it. They made him, just so you know, a number one. He was a number one bestseller at one point. Again, very notable global celebrities have been on the show going, I love it. I actually think your dad's writing is really good. I find it really fun. I think your dad's really creative. And they do questions where he's never on the podcast, his father, Rocky Flintstone, we'll call him. But they have taken listener questions and some of the celebrity questions in studio, presented them to his father to write response, and he loves them. And actually, his responses are often quite funny. So he's very much in on the joke, and it's made him, arguably, we're not sure, possibly a millionaire. It's made him very wealthy.
He seems like a Tommy Wiseau kind of character from The Room, wherein he
maybe more self-aware than Tommy.
Yeah, certainly.
Maybe.
But the other thing that's interesting to me about this podcast is that whether or not the writing is good, it is. I agree with you that you do have to kind of suffer through the terrible writing to enjoy the jokes. But to me, I felt like I was going along for the ride rather than being affronted by the writing itself. But I love this podcast because it's so strange. And it's something that only a podcast can really do. You couldn't do this as a TV show. You couldn't do this as a film. It doesn't work on the radio. I think this is what makes podcasting so interesting, is it's not just people doing interviews or people making jokes and just doing comedy, but it's so specific. It's a guy who knew his dad wrote erotica, took that erotica, and then got his friends together so he could read it to them so that they could riff on it.
Right.
Which is so bizarre and amazing.
And that description, I think, which does sum up the podcast, I think if you were that guy and you're in him and his buddies and you're making fun of this, would be very funny. And again, I laughed. There were very funny comments about the writing stuff. And apparently I've only listened to 2. Maybe it gets better. Maybe it's, you said you were out at 7.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I'm assuming that the content is very similar every week.
I'd say so, yeah. It doesn't really, there's not a peak and valley.
Right.
And the other thing is, it's not like the dad becomes a better writer over time.
Yeah, I'm guessing not.
And the situations become more and more outlandish. John disagrees.
Yeah.
I think he does. I do think he actually evolves somewhat over time.
Just through the process of writing. Well, remember that he started as a travel writer.
Right.
And then moves into erotica, probably because of the success of 50 Shades of Grey or whatever. I've always thought, how easy it would be to pump out bad erotica, and people would probably still buy it.
Sure. They even mention that his mom and dad referred to it as 50 colors of gray or something.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
50 gray colors. That
he's a dad. He gets titles wrong, is all I can
exactly.
I do think he is creative. Things get unbelievably bizarre as time goes on. Far more bizarre than what you heard in episodes 1 and 2.
Okay.
And he does one of them. He's capable of at least eliciting in me possibly the most important thing that any narrative can elicit in a listener or reader, and that is asking the question and wanting to know the answer to what happens next.
Okay.
Sure.
It gets so bizarre. It's a Chekhov's dildo, if you will.
Right.
If you introduce it in Act 1, you got to use it in Act 3. And sometimes the things introduced are so bizarre. The characters are so-and-so. There's a particular, I believe he's a Texas-based businessman.
Yes.
Also, this is very much through the filter.
Isn't that Jim Sterling?
Of Jim Sterling.
Yeah, what a great character.
Remember, these were all created by someone who's very much a Little Britainer. Someone who's a suburban British man.
Was a salesman for 30 years.
Right, and thought, this is what international sales would be like. This is what a Texan is like. This is what he'd want. This is what he'd do and say. And of course, most of it is hilariously off base. There are these really broad stereotype, the caricatures, exactly. But anyone who creates in a space where there's nothing creates something, even if what they created was Belinda Blinked. I have to give some credit to you. Having said that, I want to go back